For today's lesson, we will be finding the percent of a number, and the standard that will be addressed in this lesson is listed here, 6 RP 3C. So as we've established in this chapter, we know that 5% represents 5 units for every 100. So 5% of a whole quantity refers to the part of the quantity that represents 5%, because unfortunately, not everything is going to be out of 100, but we do say that the full thing is 100%. So we're going to figure out what 5% of a quantity is. And as has been mentioned in previous lessons, the word of usually means multiplication. So a pretty important formula that we will use today is total times percent equals the part. So if we want to find 5% of 160, we have two ways to do this, two methods that we can utilize. The first method is by converting that percentage into a fraction. So 5% is equivalent to 5/100ths of means times, and we're multiplying by 160, which we can write as 160 over 1. We can do some simplifying here. We can divide both the 100 and the 160 by 10, so we eliminate those zeros. We now have 5/10ths. Well, 5/10ths can simplify down to 1/2. And then we can divide both 16 and 2 by 2. 2 becomes 1, 16 becomes 8. So we have an answer of 8. Our second method would require us to turn that percentage into a decimal. So 5% would be 0.05 of means times 160. So we can rewrite this, make it a little bit easier for us. 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 6 is 30. Excuse me. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 3 is 8. There are no digits here after the decimal point. 2 digits there for a total of 2 digits after the decimal point. So once again, our answer is 8. So if we want to determine what 40% of 720 centimeters is, one method is we could use a fraction. So 40% would be 40 over 100 of means times 720. We can divide both of those by 10, eliminate zeros. Divide 40 and 10 by 10 to eliminate those zeros. And now we're left with 4 times 72, which is 288 centimeters. Method 2 would be converting 40% into a decimal. Well, that decimal would be 0.40. And when we rewrite our multiplication, we can actually make it just 4/10ths because we don't need that last zero. 4 times 0 is 0, 4 times 2 is 8, 4 times 7 is 28. No digits here, 1 digit here for a total of 1 digit after the decimal point. So once again, we get 288 centimeters. Scroll down a little bit. For number 2, what is 75% of 800 kilograms? Well, this is where some previous knowledge would come in extremely helpful for method 1. And hopefully when you see 75%, you realize that 75% as a fraction is 3/4. So that'd be 3/4 of 800. 4 becomes 1, 800 becomes 200. 3 times 200 is 600 kilograms. Excuse me. And so 75% as a decimal is 0.75 times 800. So we take 800 times 0.75. 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 8 is 40. Start the second line with a 0. 7 times 0 is 0. 7 times 0 is 0. 7 times 8 is 56. Add those together. 0 plus 0 is 0. 0 plus 0 is 0. 0 plus 0 is 0. 4 plus 56 is 60. No digits here after decimal point. 2 there for a total of 2. So once again, our answer is 600 kilograms. From this point on, you do not have to use both methods. You may choose whichever method works best for you. So for number 3, if we're doing 30% of 450, I would use a fraction. And the reason I would use a fraction is because I can eliminate all of those zeros by simply simplifying. And then I do 45 times 3, which is 135. For number 4, though, excuse me, I would use decimals. So 225% is 2.25. I'll multiply that by 60. Since my first line would be all zeros, I can skip that first line. I actually start on the second line, so I start with the 0. 6 times 5 is 30. 6 times 2 is 12, plus 3 is 15. 6 times 2 is 12, plus 1 is 13. 2 digits there after the decimal point, none there, for a total of 2. So my answer, deja vu, 135. So for number 5, 55% of 320, I would once again use a decimal here. 5 times 0 is 0, 5 times 2 is 10, 5 times 3 is 15, plus 1 is 16. For the second line, I start with the 0, and since I'm multiplying by 5 again, it's just a repeat of my previous multiplication. Add all those together. No digits after decimal point there, 2 there, for a total of 2. So my answer is 176. And then for number 6, I would return to a fraction. Because I can eliminate zeros, and then I take 55 times 11, which is 605. Excuse me. So now we want to find the whole given a quantity and its percent. So it's important to use that formula that we were given earlier, total times percent equals part. So Anna has 8% of her CD collection in a box, so that would be our percentage. If there are 96 CDs in the box, well, since she only has part of her collection in the box, the 96 represents the part. And if we want to know how many CDs are in Anna's collection, that would be the total. So total times 8% equals 96. So we solve our equation by dividing both sides by 8%. So we would have 96 divided by 8 over 100, because that's what 8% is as a fraction. Let's scroll just a little bit. Keep times turn. 8 becomes 1. 96 becomes 12. 12 times 100 is 1,200. Excuse me. So for number 7 again, total times percent equals part. 27% of the students in a school are in grade 6. That's our percentage. This is 540 students. And since we're just talking about the 6th graders, that would be your part. So how many students are there in the school? That refers to us finding a total. So as in the previous question, we're going to divide both sides by 27%. So that would be 540 over 1 divided by 27 over 100. Keep times turn. 27 becomes 1. 540 becomes 20. So our answer is 2,000 students. And something you'd want to do with these questions, as I should have mentioned this earlier, is make sure that that answer makes sense. If there's 500 students in 6th grade alone, would it make sense for there to be 2,000 students in the building? Yes, it would. Scroll down a little bit here for number 8. At an amusement park, 60% of the people were adults and the rest were children. There were 720 adults. How many people were at the amusement park? Excuse me. So 60% is our percentage. Since there were 720 adults, that's just part of the population because there's also the children. And so we're finding our total once again. So divide both sides by 60%. Keep times turn. We can eliminate zeros. 6 becomes 1. 720 is 120. 120 times 10, 1,200 people. And if there are 720 adults and that's more than half, would it make sense that there's 1,200 people? Absolutely. And we have some final examples here. Mrs. Stapleton had 2,600 hens, ducks, and goats on her farm. 35% of them were hens and 25% of them were goats. How many ducks did she have on the farm? So once again, if we use our equation, total times percent equals part, the 2,600, that's your total, because that's telling you how many animals she has on the farm. Well, then it says how many ducks. Well, if 35% were hens and 25% were goats, that would give you 60% of the animals. So the ducks would make up the remaining percentage. So the ducks would actually be 40%. And so we need to find how many ducks there were. So 2,600 times 40 over 100, eliminate zeros, eliminate zeros. So we take 260 times 4, which is 1,040 ducks. Throw down a little bit for these final questions here. Excuse me. So for number 9, we'd have 20% of some number is 163. Divide both sides by 20%. So that would be 163 divided by 20 over 100. Keep times turn. 20 becomes 1, 100 becomes 5. 5 times 163, 5 times 3 is 15. 5 times 6 is 30, plus 1 is 31. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 3 is 8. So our answer is 815. 45% of something is 150. So 45% of something is 150. Divide both sides by 45%. So 150 divided by 45 over 100. Keep times turn. If I divide both of these by 15, 45 becomes 3, 150 becomes 10. 10 times 100 is 1,000 over 3, which is 333 and 1/3. And finally, number 15 here, 400% of a number is 45. Divide both sides by 400%. That would be 45 divided by 400 over 100, which 400 over 100 would be 4. So 45 divided by 4 would be 45 over 4, which is 11 and 1/4. And that is all for today's lesson. As always, I hope this helps. helps.